I wanted to talk about the conflict in the West Asia, but before getting there, in the last 4 days, we've learned something new, which is the government in Bangladesh. They said they're considering, joining the Mecca pact or defense pact, security pact between Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. This is so important for those people in our audience who don't know that Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan they were called Indian subcontinent, and these are the same people, the same land, the same. But today you see some sort of division between them. And Bangladesh is in the eastern part of India. It's not even close to Pakistan. What is your understanding of the position of Bangladesh? They're interested to join that pact.
Nima, there's a bit of a background that we first need to understand before we go to Bangladesh. And the background is, what exactly is this Makkah Joint Defense Agreement? The basics of it. Because I somehow feel that in the West, it is not understood the way perhaps it should be understood. Now, there are two key things here in this joint defense agreement. The first thing is, it is about collective security. Now, collective security is an entirely different concept from absolute security. Absolute security is a zero sum game when you talk of security, that my security at your expense. And that is what leads to wars and conflicts. Collective security is that the focus is on development. As far as security is concerned, my security should not be at the cost of your security. So we are talking about relative security, and we are talking about negotiations on security. So the talk should happen.
Sorry for interrupting you, Pravin.
Yeah.
This definition that you just gave us is basically the same thing that is happening between Iran and Russia with that strategic. Go ahead.
That's right. That's right. Because this is the concept of the New World Order. So you are absolutely right. That is precisely what's happening between Iran and Russia. So one part is collective security, and the other part is collective deterrence. Now, collective deterrence basically means that all the three countries, they stand together and they deter the outside powers. And in the case of West Asia, the power, Israel also will be considered an outside power, because Israel is totally dependent on the American military infrastructure, on the central command. So Israel is that odd nation, which is creating all the problems. So when we talk of deterrence, what this means is that all the three countries, they are there to deter the enemy or the adversary. It doesn't mean that they start the war with that country. So one part is to deter, which is a peacetime activity where you have joint projects, you have cooperation in defense, all those things go on. That's a peacetime activity. You are deterring. That means, as far as the adversary is concerned, he has to dovetail in his war appreciation, in his war plan, that there could be a contingency against three that I have to fight and not one. The other part is defense. Now, when you go from peacetime deterrence to war, you are talking of defense. Now, this has nothing to do with Article 5 of NATO, because NATO is about absolute security. This has to do about Article 51 of the United Nations. Now, this is entirely different. That means NATO does not work within United Nations, but this pact will work under the United Nations. In other words, defense is to be done by the countries concerned, and the United Nations has to be informed. Now, if you see Article 51, there are two provisions there. One is self-defense, one is collective defense. So let's assume, hypothetically speaking, that there is problem between Turkey and Israel, which actually there is. It is actually not a hypothetical situation at all. So there is a problem. Now, if the things come, they become hot, and hypothetically, if there is a war, then Turkey will decide whether it wants to fight all by itself, which is self defense, or it wants the help, or what sort of help it wants from Saudi Arabia and from Pakistan. So you see, the focus here is really on development and looking at collective security against an adversary. Now, what is happening is that in West Asia, in this concept, Pakistan is playing a very important role. And the initiator of this concept is actually Iran. Because on the 29th of June, Abbas Araghchi had said, after his visit to Russia and China, that there is a need for a post war regional framework. And for that regional framework, that means once the American forces they leave West Asia, then we need our own security. And for that own security, a definitive step towards regional framework is this Mecca Joint Defense Agreement. So once we understand this part, the second part is now this is expanding. It has gone beyond. For example, Pakistan has already done a defense cooperation on the African continent with Somalia. So it is a matter of time. Today, there are 20 Muslim majority countries in Africa out of 54 countries there. So it's a matter of time where all the other countries which want development, they will go for collective security wherever they have a problem, instead of looking at war and absolute security. Now, coming to South Asia. In South Asia, what has happened is that between Bangladesh, since the new government has come in Bangladesh, and because India has given asylum to Hasina, and which the new government does not want, they want that Hasina should be deported back because she has to stand trial in Bangladesh. So, since the coming of the new government, what has happened is that the relations between Pakistan and Bangladesh, they have now become very close. And what we see is it is not only about the military closeness in the sense that they are looking at joint collaboration, the military chiefs are talking to one another. It is also about intelligence sharing, because the ISI officers, they have gone to Bangladesh, and the Bangladeshi intelligence people have gone to Pakistan. So now what the Bangladeshis are looking at, because another point that we need to understand is that today in South Asia, except for India in Bhutan, all the other countries are on board China's Belt and Road Initiative, and that includes Pakistan as well as Bangladesh. And this concept that you spoke about, that Iran has the same concept with Russia, so China also has the same concept. This is the concept of the New World Order, where you focus on development, where you look at collective security. So now the advisor of the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, he has made this statement, and it is extremely significant for India. His statement is that we are also looking at the possibility of joining this joint defense agreement. Like so many other countries in West Asia also want to join. So it has now come to South Asia also, this need to join this. Now for India, the problem then becomes is because India left South Asia geopolitically in 2014, there was a big void when India left SAARC. Now Bangladesh wants to have SAARC back. India instead, went to BIMSTEC, and that's a different story. So geopolitically, there has been a void in South Asia, and India's key vulnerability today. The first point before I come to key vulnerability is that since it left SAARC, India has not paid the attention that it should have to all its smaller neighbors. As you rightly pointed out, if you see the map of South Asia, there is a huge geographical peculiarity. And that peculiarity is that all the other countries, they have border with India, but they do not have border with one another, land borders they do not have with one another. So once the Bangladeshis join this, and in any case, see, this will be a formal arrangement. Something that is already going on informally will become formal. Then there is trouble for India. See, there is trouble for India in what is called the Siliguri corridor, what we also call in the military parlance chicken's neck. Now, this is a very narrow strip of land, which is, at the narrowest, it is about 20 to 22 kilometers. It is so narrow, and this is India's only connection to its northeast. So, if this is threatened, India has a big problem. So once we look at the map of South Asia, so the threat to Siliguri corridor increases, because India has left this area geopolitically in 2014, and the Pakistani profile, geopolitical profile, has risen a lot. And as I said, Pakistan is very much behind this concept of the regional frameworks, whether it is in West Asia, whether it is in South Asia, and whether they will be in Africa. So that is where it is not a good situation for India.
Yeah. How, Pravin, how do you see the new escalations between Turkey and Israel? And the other point would be, do you see the United States being able to resolve that, or you see a continuous sort of tension growing and growing as it was between Iran and Israel? You see, finally, it ended to a war, a hot war between the two sides, which basically the United States is fighting the Iranians, not Israel. Israel stay aside and let the United States do that. And on the other hand, you see, when it comes to Turkey, Turkey is part of NATO. It's somehow totally different with what has happened between Iran and the United States. How do you understand that?
See, first of all, let me say my bottom line on this, which is different from the bottom line of most of the American analysts. I do not see Turkey getting into a war with Israel. Israel is trying its best to start a war, to start a problem with Turkey, because it wants to bring America also in it. That is its requirement. And in
Exactly.
fact, if you see the statement that has come from the American envoy in Turkey, which is Tom Barak, he has said very clearly that Turkey is exercising extreme restraint. Now, why I say that Israel wants to bring in America, because for Israel it is important that the wars continue. Israel does not want peace at all, it just wants war. This is the reason that on the 18th of April, the Israelis, they went and fired at this base in Syria, where they said that, there's a buildup happening of Turkey buildup is happening there. Now, when you see Israel itself, Israel cannot fight the war. I'll tell you many reasons for that. Number one, please recall that in the month of May, the IDF army chief, who is Zamir, General Zamir, he had made a statement that IDF is overstretched. It was in May. Why overstretched? Because it is fighting on so many fronts. It is fighting with Hezbollah, it is fighting with Hamas, it is fighting in Yemen with the Yemenis, then it is fighting with Iran. And he said that we are short of at least 15,000 soldiers. And he said they are exhausted. Then we know also, as far as the arsenal is concerned, you see the military capabilities. Israelis are short on everything, whether it is Arrow 2, whether it is Arrow 3, whether it is David Sling, whether it is Iron Dome, and whether it is the Americans providing them with THAAD or with Patriot Pack 3s. Everything is short. So that is being overstretched. That's one part. Second is, the interesting thing that has happened is that immediately after that, the Syrian foreign minister, he traveled to Pakistan, and he met up in Pakistan with their officials, and especially he had a meeting with Field Marshal Asim Munir. And now we know what he was looking there is also to join the Joint Defense Agreement. Now, this Joint Defense Agreement for Turkey is a fallback. And I have just explained what this Joint Defense Agreement is. So, Turkey has a fallback today. Turkey does not want to get into a war because Turkey understands that as far as its own position is concerned, see, when you look at the geography, Turkey is perhaps so well placed, it is amazing. And the influence that the Turks have, that is also amazing. The strategic influence that they have, I won't go in the details. But the only troubling thing about Turkey is that the president, Erdogan, I fail to understand why he continues to provide oil from Baku to the Israelis. But that said, he has come very hard on the Israelis on the Gaza issue. And the thing is that for Turks, as you pointed out, they are member of NATO, but they are sufficiently frustrated of not becoming a member of EU. And personally, Erdogan may not be very happy that Trump promised him F-35s, and it is very unlikely that he'll get the F-35s. So while they have the tactical nuclear weapons of America on their soil, but of course the command and control is with the Americans, in my assessment, the Turks have finally decided that their Muslim identity and be part of the regional framework is what will help them economically, and it will help them in their rise. So, this is the way I see it. See, Israel is doing all the mischief. Israel is an expansionist country. Israel is a terrorist country. But when you see per se the military capabilities of Israel, they are actually not much, they are overblown. Because without central command, there is very little that Israel can do. Whereas I personally would assess the Turkish military and their capabilities, their production capabilities in military as far more advanced and better. So this is the way, Nima, I see that he is creating problems, Netanyahu, perhaps because of the October elections. But that is not the point. The point is these Zionists are like that. Even if he is replaced by the next man, he is also talking the same things. So these Zionists their wings will only get clipped once the Palestinian issue is, it's in the possibility of getting resolved. And there again, there is a problem, if you allow me. I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing. It is amazing when I see the GCC countries and their duplicity, what they are trying to do. It's shocking. Recently the statement was issued by so many countries where UAE is also there, Saudi is there, Qatar is there, Jordan, Pakistan, Egypt, that they are against this E1 settlement plan. Now, what is Israel trying to do? Israel has first of all divided very clearly the West Bank from Gaza. And in West Bank, they have created this E1 corridor. So West Bank itself is Northwest Bank and Southwest Bank. And in that corridor, they have put some 500, settlers have been put there. So when you see this situation, now Iran by itself cannot do much. The GCC countries coming up with these sort of statements is fine, but you have to go beyond that. And the biggest issue in the GCC I see is UAE, hugely duplicitous country. The only thing what they have, of course, oil and gas, what they have is a sovereign wealth fund, which is substantial, which is nearly, it is about $2.9 trillion, which is a hell of a lot. That is what they have. Otherwise, what is UAE? Just about 1 million Emirati, 10 million are outsiders. So, but they are part of BRICS, they are part of Abraham Accord, they have huge investments in America, they have investments in Israel. So, recently, you know very well that they have cut all their financial transactions, trade with Iran, and Iran is their second largest trading partner. For Iran is UAE. So when you look at this whole picture, what looks is that Iran and Pakistan, with the support of China and Russia, they have been extremely successful in starting this joint defense agreement, which is a good step towards the regional framework. And because of that, this has, incentivized, it's now given the incentive to the other region also to look, the same way like the Bangladeshis are doing. So this is where things are.